How you doing? I'm Marc Garcia. I served in the United States Navy from 1989 to 1996 on board the USS Peterson DD-969. One of the things that occurred in my life, and I have the wonderful privilege of doing, is speaking to other veterans about PTSD. But I didn't realize that I had my own issues that I had to deal with. Even though I was giving counseling to these men and women that are going through these issues, I didn't realize that I also had an issue. It wasn't until we came for a men's gathering or men's retreat here in this very spot where Pastor Denise and Pastor Lee came, and they were sharing, Pastor Denise was sharing about the Exodus mission that God has given her in her heart to launch forward, where I began to realize certain things. That was one of them. The other part was that I didn't realize that when I was in Desert Storm or Desert Shield, somewhat post of it, was deployed to the Suez and then into the Red Sea, and we launched 14 Tomahawk missiles. And I was part of that team that launched those 14 missiles along with another ship alongside of us as a reaction to what happened to President Bush, the threat to President Bush's life. When we got the pictures for the BDA, which is Battle Damage Assessment, it was interesting to me in hindsight here because we actually celebrated the photos of death. Seeing dead bodies torn apart, the pictures, not be overly grotesque, but to give you just the picture of it. It was something that at that time, as a group, as a ship, 300 men on the ship, we celebrated it. Why? Because we're doing our job and we didn't see it any differently. But what happened was that actually desensitized me to death. And for the majority of my life, I can see death without being affected at all. My wife and I love to watch TV. We're movie buffs, and so even gangster movies that we'd watch, I would see people get shot, get killed, whatever it may be, grotesque to others. My wife would turn her head, and I would just look straight at it as if nothing was happening. And I'd often wonder and ask her, "Why are you turning your head? You want to watch the show?" And I began to realize here, sitting right there on that sofa, as tears rolled down my face, that I was desensitized to death. And I began to really start the process of really self-analysis. The beauty of the Lord is He allows us to self-analyze, right? And really bring us to the place to where we have to acknowledge for ourselves what may be wrong within ourselves to bring correction into our life and allow Him to bring that correction into our life, not do it on our own. Thank God. And so upstairs, after that time, I just sat by the bed and just cried. And I apologize if I get emotional here, but it was very emotional for me to realize I was out of the Navy in 1996, and here it's 2023, and I lived all my entire life. I got home, I shared with my wife my experience, and again, emotions. Because I began to realize and understand, I always wondered why is it that before I went into the military, kids would love me, kids would gravitate to me, and I would be able to enjoy the presence of kids. But now after the military, I never understood why. After the military, it was completely different. Kids would just alienate themselves from me, and I couldn't find a relationship with children. And then this brought to life to me the reason why is because I've been marred by the photos of death and not value life. And once I began that process of healing, began to allow the Lord to deal with me in that situation and have the emotion and release of that emotion and get to the place to where God can actually start to talk to me about things, and then began to realize how God actually was restoring that relationship with children to now. It's not like it was before yet. It's a process. It's not easy either. It's quite difficult, but I began to resensitize myself, train myself, just like the military trained me to desensitize it, but resensitize myself to life and get away from the death. So even when my wife and I will watch that TV program that we like, right, and we find death on the screen, she'll turn her head, I'll turn my head, and we'll wait for a moment. And really dealing with it, quite honestly and quite candidly, dealing with it as if I was watching soft porn, because it had to be removed from my life. It had to be eradicated from my life. That's the only way I can get the healing. And so I just want to share with you, if you're in the military, you've been in the military, and even if you don't feel like you have PTSD and you've seen other guys with much more grave situations of PTSD, I've dealt with many men who actually considered suicide and killing themselves because of that, just to get away because they feel like they're failing their family. And I understand where you guys are at. It's just difficult to get through that process. But if you find yourself there, please get to an Exodus mission retreat. Allow God to start to deal with you. You don't come here for Pastor Lee and Pastor Denise to heal you because they're incapable of doing it. You come here to allow Holy Spirit to use them and minister into your life and bring healing into your life so that you, your family, your siblings, everybody, your entire circle of influence can become knitted the way it's supposed to be knitted, not you always looking over your shoulder. I still have an issue when we go into a restaurant. I have to sit in the far back corner and make sure I can see everything that comes in because I don't want to give my back to the door in case something happens. And I know some of you guys watching may actually relate to that very much. And so it is a process. It's not going to happen by night and day. From night to day, it is going to take a process, but it has to be a voluntary process by you and allow God to be part of your life that way.